Hey guys, Tommy Kerrigan with Tommy Untamed. We've got a great show coming up. Thank you for watching. What's up, guys? Thank you for watching Tommy Untamed. We're going to take a quick break and give a shout out to the sponsors who support the show and make it possible. The world's smartest investors are not buying oil stocks, they're buying mailbox money or oil royalties instead. I'm talking about passive income that shows up month after month, starting with as little as $25. Visit KerriganOilBoom.com to discover how to tap into monthly royalty checks from America's most productive oil basin. You don't need to be wealthy or connected, you just need a regular brokerage account. That's KerriganOilBoom.com to learn how you could start collecting oil royalty checks every month. Heaven's Harvest Prepper Food, 72 servings per pail, 25 years shelf life. I've had the owner Clayton on the show before. He's a God-fearing, America-loving patriot. Get one of these, get a couple of them, throw them in your basement. It's good to have it, not need it, than to need it and not have it. If you don't want to do that, you can get their seeds. You can plant your own garden, so you don't even have to keep buying them. You can just get the goods and start your own, or you can even get freeze-dried fruits and vegetables like bananas, apples, strawberries, and raspberries. They support the show. It's an honest product. It's a good safety measure to have, and they keep my show free for you. So I'd implore you guys to please go to heavensharvest.com, use the link in the description, promo code TPC. Axios Fitness Coaching is a premium resource for holistic strength and conditioning services. Axios is best known for the Training Club, capital T, capital C, an exclusive community that prioritizes accountability, technique, diet, and nutrition. Everything you need to do to take action against the decay of the modern world. Whether you're looking to improve your physique, build strength, or just take care of your health and fitness, Axios will provide you with the solution that is effective and simple to execute. All you need to do is complete the intake survey, and you can see if you're a good candidate for the training club or any other of the services. And it's going to sponsor the show. So, one company falls off, another one arises. So if you guys like the show, you want to work out, throw the show a couple shekels. Go take the survey. Thank you so much, guys.
Higher ultraviolet exposure is associated with lower mortality. The United Kingdom is a high latitude and low sunlight country. Researchers there collected data on over 360,000 participants in a study of UV exposure via solarium use. When compared with non-users, solarium users had 15% risk lowered of all-cause mortality, 23% lower risk of cardiovascular mortality, 14% lower risk of cancer mortality, and a 12% lower risk of non-cardiovascular, non-cancer mortality. In other words, all other causes. Quoting the researchers, our study adds to the growing evidence that the benefits of UV exposure outweigh the risks in low sunlight environments. A link to the original publication is available in the box below the video. Get some UV light this winter. Immerse yourself in the tranquility of the blue. Visit a blue room soon. www.blueroom.com.
Multiple guests in the last week have said my microphone isn't loud enough, and happening again on a different computer with different software last night. So I don't know what's going on. I was going to say I could probably talk to you about that because in your book, The Truth About Wuhan, the link is in the description, about being harassed by federal agencies, and no, you're not going crazy. Yes, they do this. No, I don't think they're doing it to me. A lot different, but still, in terms of a general, you are someone that if somebody starts talking and someone else goes, yeah, that guy's kind of crazy, you can be like, no, he's not. No, he's fucking not. Like, it happened to me. But you have a wild story, and I know you're pushing news right now, a new story about everything that's going on. And so I'm going to shut my mouth. And whenever I introduce you to someone, or talk about you. I don't know why. I don't talk about you being a doctor or your career. I always talk about, yeah, he shot a bunch of ammo and his hearing's fucked up. I don't know why. That always sticks in my head. You're just like, yeah, I was doing a belt fed for 12 hours. I have no idea why, but that's how I remember you. So I'll give it to you, man. How you doing?
Well, I'm doing fantastic. Thanks for having me on the show again. And I can't believe you remember that story, but for the audience, when I first got into the Army, my first time on a machine gun range. So we were shooting 50 caliber machine guns, 240 Bravos, which is a 7.62 automatic weapon. And then also we had some old M60s that we had to decommission. And basically at the end of the day, we had a whole pallet of ammo. and we were ordered to make the guns inoperable. And the way that, we came up with doing that was belt feeding thousands of rounds of ammunition through the M60s until the barrels, bent. So that's what we did. It was quite the experience, and I was so excited to do this for my first time. I told the white lie to my NCO, like, yes, I have earplugs in, I have ear protection, and I didn't. And after shooting 50 caliber rounds and a whole line of these weapons being lined up and numerous people firing these, my hearing was shot, and I still have some permanent hearing damage from that. One of the dumbest things that I've ever done in my life.
Yeah, and I don't know why.
I
That's
don't
how I
regret it though,
remember you.
and actually, I received so much great training on that day from my NCOs and how to do volley fires and different strategies for binding the weapon so it stays on target. And I mean, it was an incredible learning experience in shooting weapons. So
That's
I'm
how I
thankful.
remember you. I don't know. Not Ego Health Alliance. Not like your Forrest Gump proximity to the largest conspiracy in modern history. I just think if you've just belt feeding an M60 till this barrel warps. I have no idea. I have no idea why, but that's just I don't know. I've talked to so many guests that I think my brain just chooses random highlights and goes, "That's how you remember." I'm like, all right, that's how I remember you. Um,
Well, I love the military. I love the Army. I have much respect for people who serve. I was very proud to serve. Like many people served, I wasn't always happy with my missions or some of the deployments and some of the things that went on. But it's a mixed bag. Some of it was incredible. A couple fun points. So I actually applied to two things about a year and a half ago. I applied to be a NASA crew commander in the astronaut program, and you have to take all these different tests online, and it's very difficult. So typically, you have to have a PhD. They love people who are military trained. Well, next thing you know, the assistant director at NASA started chatting me up about 30 days after I applied. And so I took that as I passed all the tests and they were selecting me for this program. And then they wanted to get to know me better. And we were chatting about it. And I went and did some research on the crew and the current, candidates who are going in. And, I didn't really feel like I could be stuck in a spacecraft with some of those people for a year or two at a time. It was like a personality thing. And,
hmm,
that's a really big deal and a huge responsibility. So I just sort of quietly withdrew from the program. So that was interesting.
yeah.
And then related to this, oh, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say no. That's a giant thing. I mean, part of the tests are even for like Mars habitats and stuff, right? Is they'll go put you out in a container in Nevada and be like, you have to stay in there for 1,200 days. It's a huge
Well,
thing.
actually, when you apply through the government website, they say once you begin this application or this test, you can't stop, and you actually have to take a series of different tests. You have to take like mathematical tests. You have to write reports and technical reports, and they're timed. And so, I went through all of this, and I felt good. After the series of tests, I think it took like an hour and a half to get through all the different tests. And the other thing is astronauts don't make that much money actually. They make between 120 and 150K a year. And for people who, later in the career in science and doctors, you can make much more money, especially in the private sector. And then with the risk, and the danger, and I've got a little son that I love, so I decided, it wasn't for me. And I was really excited about it at the time, but then, at that same time, I also applied to this thing called the 38 Golf Program, which is in civilian affairs, which is part of psychological operations with the Department of Defense, Army. It's attached to Special Operations Command out of Fort Bragg. And I was actually giving a talk at a university, and someone in the crowd came up to me afterwards, and they asked me, "Would you consider joining the Army again?" And I laughed. I go, after everything I've been through and all this craziness and the whistleblowing, and they're like, "No, we're pretty sure that we'd like to have you back. We think you're an outstanding candidate. We're really proud of what you did." And this was someone at the rank of major. And so I submitted, went through all this work. You have to submit a huge application packet, fill out all these forms. I did all that, and I didn't hear anything back for a while. I had actually interviewed with some of the higher ranking officers at the rank of colonel, a couple of colonels, lieutenant colonels, started social networking with everyone in the program, got to learn about how it worked. And these are the guys who really do intelligence and civilian support operations along the side of special forces when forward deployed. It's actually a really dangerous job. A lot of these civilian affairs officers in this part of the military get killed. But
Joe
hey,
Kent's.
what? They
I
keep.
was gonna say I've had on Joe Ken. His wife was a NSA linguist, and she was killed by a suicide bomber in 2019. I think he was a former Green Beret. He's been on the show. He was appointed. I think he's like the director of counterterrorism. No, but no, that's a huge thing. No, civilians absolutely KIA.
Well, so that was about a year and a half ago. I applied, went through all this, and then things got quiet, and I didn't hear anything for the longest time. And I just figured, typical military DoD, my packet got lost and it wasn't progressing. And then all of a sudden, I got a phone call from one of the recruiting officers this week, actually, and they were super apologetic, and they wanted to let me know that my application was still going forward. And to go along with that, they informed me that the person who was running, the officer in charge of this recruiting effort, had died in a plane crash with his family.
Whoa,
Crazy,
that's
crazy
whoa.
story. So they didn't lose my packet. They had a critical member of the team had been lost, and then because this is the Army Reserve, actually, they not everyone was aware that this person had passed away, so they were picking things up. So they called me to let me know that that direct commission process will happen within the next year. So
That's
that's sort of crazy to think I'll be back in the Army at probably a pretty high rank.
Yeah, no, that's a wild and I don't want to deviate. Normally, I don't care, but I do want to get to the topic, which I normally almost never do. I was gonna say, no, that's a wild. I had three people from my high school class. I graduated in 2009. I'm 34. Three people in my high school class died in December, just randomly, each just like freak accidents, and it is one of those things that brings it all. So like at first, it's like, yeah, NASA. It's the size of the office and the mission, that alone is impressive, and that can pull you in and be like, this is amazing, of course I would do this. But every once in a while you just have those moments where you see someone just get clapped and you're like, oh, this whole thing ends. And it's a very sobering thing. Yeah, you with the son, you're like, yeah, no, maybe at a different time in my life I'd just go through the NASA thing, but it does just end. Not to go into like a dark period, but it is a wild thing. Whenever I have doubts about this
No, you
podcast, it's
need
good.
to smile and laugh. You get dark so often.
Yeah.
We're gonna make you
No, no,
an
no, no, no. Well, I was
optimistic
gonna say
guy.
that the flip side is whenever I doubt doing this podcast, is it gonna succeed? Then I go, wait, no, if I die today, I would have zero regrets. No part of me would regret this. I'd be like, you know what, I went for it. I'm proud of that. So no, it comes full circle. That's crazy though. Yeah, you're getting back in the army, and how does that how does that tie in with your past whistleblowing then? I feel like they would. I feel like the rule of thumb or the stereotype is like they don't warm up to whistleblowing at all, right? It's no matter what they say, on a website or in a presidential speech. Historically, the armed forces, DoD, the intelligence community, they don't really warm up to whistleblowing. But in this case, they know full well everything you did. Not only are they okay with it, you said that the guy said they were proud of it. Go into
Well,
that.
I did everything by the book. So there's a
Yeah.
way to whistleblow and there's a way not to do it.
Sure.
And so I followed the rules. I went through internal channels first, reported everything through internal channels, and then after I did that, I went public. And really, there was nothing. So your audience understands. So this COVID whistleblowing stuff, I didn't have an active clearance related to the program at the time, so that wasn't a factor when all this gain of function research happened. So I was a vice president at Equal Health Alliance and also a senior scientist there. And I was not, I was a civilian at that point, and I was working on a publicly funded program at a nonprofit organization that was telling everyone that we were out trying to save the planet and wildlife and conserve wildlife through engaging in essentially population medicine and population health. And when I worked at Eco Alliance, I came to learn that that wasn't the truth. What we were really doing is we were going around the world and collecting rare viruses so that we could conduct gain of function research to make medical countermeasures, vaccines, and that kind of thing. And when I left Equal Health Alliance in 2016, I never thought Equal Health Alliance was going to amount to much. I thought it was going to be a complete boondoggle, and that their funding would likely dry up. And I was sort of always amazed that this would go on. But some weird disclosures took place. Dr. Peter Daszak, who was the president and CEO, he's now been fired. Um, Admitted to me and told me, disclosed that someone from the CIA had approached him and they were interested in the places we were working, the people that we were working with, and the data that we were collecting. And you specifically referenced China. And on this big predict program, we had all these different countries internationally that we worked with, and each contractor, each company like EcoHealth had its sort of risk map of the globe, like the game risk, so we each were sort of fighting to have control of the research in all these different countries. And China was one of the countries we controlled, and Peter Daszak was trying to get me involved with the work in China, but because of my national security background, being a formal Q, aka top secret cleared national laboratory scientist, I wanted nothing to do with it because it becomes a reporting hassle. Okay, you have to report all your foreign contacts and relationships that are meaningful, business transactions. It's a huge pain, and then on top of it, I just wasn't a fan of doing collaborative research with the Chinese because they lie, cheat, and steal. Well, employed as an executive at EcoHealth towards the end of my tenure there, I actually not reported, but made a statement at an executive meeting where I flat out said that, we shouldn't be doing this work in China because I was trying to protect the company. And there was obviously glaring national security risks. I met Dr. Ralph Barrick and Dr. Shi Zheng Li. I went to the presentations. I met a number of other high-ranking officials that have now come under the microscope and under the gun. Dr. David Morens, who is Fauci's number 2, I actually took him to dinner a few times. So all these people were very much in my sphere. And I did nothing other than telling the truth. So from the Department of Defense's perspective, that's what they want. So when you have security clearance, you have to tell the truth. You have to disclose information. And as an executive and a leader, it's your job to foresee risk and take reasonable actions to mitigate risk. And if this is a giant national security problem, I was just coming at it from the perspective is that when we have a problem, this is how we address it and this is how we fix it. And, in the context of all the craziness that everyone is well aware of now, especially your audience probably from 2019 to 2024, I came under a lot of pressure, and looking back, I understand who the different various groups were. Some of it was political from the Republican Party. Some of it was Democrat. Some of it was from academic institutions and pharmaceutical institutions. I mean, basically, everyone tried to sort of pile on me at the same time. Some of it was government, okay. Some of it was Department of Defense and other agencies. But I just pushed back and battled real hard, and I just put my nose to the ground. And when things got stressful or hard, I pushed really harder. And during that period, one of the weird things that happened was that there's a man who approached me by the name of, he claimed to be a doctor, Dr. Mike Bennett, and he might be actually a senior DHS official, I believe. Contacted me and called me, and he was pretending to be interested in my company. So I had a tech startup at that time, a health tech startup, and he wanted to, he was offering to help sell my product or get some kind of contractual relationship going. Well, he quickly pivoted the conversation to my time at EcoHealth. And what was so strange about that is that he knew all the details of the research. He knew all the people involved on the programmatic on the government side, which is just something that's not public information.
Yeah, your hair's going up on your neck. You're like, what is this?
So exactly. And then so on the phone call, I told him, I go, are you a CIA agent? And I go, you're like, are you from Intel? Because you know way too much about this. And he laughed about it. And I had already made my opinion that this guy was associated with Intel, either contract or actually card carrying. And, the funny thing is, what do you do when you have someone who's in Intel and when you're from Intel? Because I used to work in the top secret national laboratory on Intel products and analysis and health security, national security, and all these things. And I served as the international diplomat on these programs. So they start lying to you, you start feeding them crap, right? And you're trying to figure out, you start then trying to use the process. If you feed them a little bit of lie within information, you want to see what happens next or where the leak pops up. This is how
flush it down the pipe. Yeah.
Bingo. So I started flushing information down the pipe to see where it happens. So one of the white lies that I told him was that you go, I think I might have a copy of the missing COVID sequence data on my hard drive in my safe. And I'm not kidding. Within a week, it was missing from the safe.
Yeah.
A lock safe.
Swatted.
So the only two people that had the combination are myself and my wife. They could have stolen it somewhere, like out of paperwork if it was written down. Could have, who knows? So they could have got it from the manufacturer. They could have had a professional safecracker come in. I mean, the CIA and FBI uses professional locksmiths. Like
Yeah.
the guy who ran the Locksmith Association was a well-known FBI or Intel safecracker. So they have these people. They exist. It's not impossible to get into a safe. You can do it undetected, but it's not likely, right? It's not very likely. And so, it comes to a couple weird questions. So, my wife is adamant that she didn't do it, and if she didn't do it, then who did? I immediately turned this into the Department of Energy, which was where my national lab was structured under in the government. The Department of Homeland Security, the FBI, the USDA, and the FDA, because what they actually stole was a DHS target list for critical infrastructure for food and ag and the supporting infrastructure. So, like water, transportation, electric, sanitation, all the different subsystems you need to support the infrastructure because these are complex systems, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when I was a PhD student at the University of Minnesota, I worked at a Department of Homeland Security Center of Excellence. And my dissertation research was focused on analyzing the data that had been collected by subject matter experts in our research center under contract by the Department of Homeland Security to identify all the threats, vulnerabilities, consequences, all the weak points in the system, not just the facilities itself, but within processing, and then system wide. So if you could seed some chemicals, chemical weapons, or biological agents into the system, can you kill people? Or does like the cooking process steps or the heating steps or any other kind of processing steps of food eliminate the risk? Because heating kills bacteria,
Mm-hmm.
right? So we did all this complex modeling and simulation work then to sort of figure out how many people could be killed and how quickly and what would be the area of impact. 1 state, 2 states, 5 states, the whole United States. And then, I further actually expanded upon this research at Sandia National Laboratories in a classified setting where I simulated highly specific, like specific chemicals, properties, biological agents, radioactive materials through highly detailed maps of the food industry or like system diagrams. Like, so if you were going to visualize this, you could have like a CAD drawing of the entire system, right?
Yeah.
And then we conceptualize that and you put that into a model, a mathematical model, and then you can do all sorts of neat things through it.
Yeah.
So a big high performance computing system. And so this is what was on this hard drive. And it had my notes on it on how to attack, all my tests that I had ran, my code for the models. And within the US government, then the Department of Homeland Security, USDA, and FDA use these data to designate what's called level 1 or level 2 critical infrastructure and key resources. That's a jargon term for saying the most critical things that we need to protect in the United States by the Department of Homeland Security. So in enemy hands, what you have here is a complete roadmap to attack all of US critical infrastructure and food and ag. And people are like, well, why did you have this? Why did you have access to this? Well, I did this research at a public university, okay? And I took all the correct steps to protect it. It was in a lock safe, right? I mean, it's not like I was running around handing this out to people. I mean, I know data protection stuff, and I was always highly protective of it, and I wouldn't share it with people. And in fact, the way that the relationship was created by the Department of Homeland Security, so the states didn't want to do this, okay? All the different states didn't want to do this. They didn't want to share their data with DHS, so they agreed to share it with the research center. And then we had a non-disclosure agreement with the states and some of the companies not to share the information. So unless we were sharing it with the Department of Homeland Security, and we had to de-identify the data. Well, I held the keys for the de-identification. I'm the one who de-identified the data, right? So I have the keys to it. So my data wasn't even everything that what probably DHS had. Mind you, but when we handed this off to DHS for the level 1 and level 2 critical infrastructure, classified as secret or top secret, rightfully so. And you can do everything in your life to protect this and make all the right steps and encrypt things. The strange thing is though, I reported the theft, and then over the next 2 years, to refresh your audience, you guys remember, do you remember all these different food facilities burning down?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, did a
Well,
ton of episodes on those.
Yeah, so you have to look at each incident very closely. And so I finally took the time when I had some downtime between my COVID whistleblowing to go analyze each event. So I went and took a look at each event to see what the root cause of the incident was. And a lot of times it looked like it came up as arson and I hypothesized in some cases it could have been like a SCADA attack, like a cyber attack, where they might make a control process overheat. Like if you have a motor, you can overwind it, take the protection controls off, and make it catch fire. And you know
Like
that didn't look like
Stuxnet.
the case in all these destroyed facilities. Some were just like there was a big cattle facility that burned down in Texas, and my opinion was that the manure likely caught fire. It happened in the summertime. I worked on dairy farms and did research on cattle. So, manure effluent ponds get hot and they can catch fire. And that's just the way it is. The bacteria breaking down all the organic matter, it just gets hot. And I've actually had it happen to me. I went and flipped manure in the summertime and had it catch fire.
Well, and hay
Um,
bales can randomly do that too.
yeah, it's the same thing. It's a
Yeah.
microbial action and catching, getting really hot. So once it gets
Before I
exposed,
forget, hold on. Before I forget, I was going to say there is something kind of poetic about you researching these systems and then finding out, what nodes you would attack, and then having that information stolen. It really is just gain a function for a different thing. You went and found it, amplified it. You're like, this is what you would do, and then someone did it.
well, sort of, but we weren't. I guess actually, I never looked at that way. It is very similar,
It's
but we
symbolic.
weren't, we weren't doing it with the intent of
Yeah,
attacking
I know, I
ourselves.
know. But
Yeah,
the same of find it, amplify it. Well, why would you amplify it? So we know how to counter it, and then it gets.
yeah. Well, and this is the reality of warfare, right?
Yeah, no, no, sure, no,
And
I know,
national
I know.
security. It's a cat and mouse game. Well, okay, so then I go through and I analyze. I think there was actually like 240 facilities roughly in the United States that had been destroyed. I after I went through and analyzed each facility, I pared that down to 99 facilities. So in my opinion, my expert opinion, 99 facilities have been intentionally destroyed, and the other ones, who knows? Like I couldn't concretely say like, and I went through and I created a scale like highly certain, highly likely, or anything below that, I eliminated from the next phase of the analysis. So this is a really simple statistical test. You run a student's t-test. So in the United States, we have 2 million registered FDA or USDA food facilities. So the question is, what is the probability that 99 of the 2 million were intentionally attacked? But here's the thing, it's further constrained. So because I actually had the whole entire rank order list of what had been nominated for level 1 and level 2 critical infrastructure and key resources, it's actually, well, it's 99 out of about 200 in the database, okay? And then, so what's the probability of 99 out of 200 within 2 million? And it turns out it's less than 1 in a billion. And what that indicates is that it's near certain that someone got a hold of this attack list and used it to attack American food production. So then what did I do after my analysis? Well, I almost vomited because I'm one of the last few experts in the field. They haven't really trained anyone else behind me. Called up all my national security experts. I called up this guy named Clay Detlefson, who's a powerful lobbyist and industry association person. I told him, and I can tell you, he was instantly angry. He's like, I don't want to hear this. I don't want to know. I don't know what to do about this. He hung up, ended the call. Spoke with Dr. Leanne Jackson. She took the Doge money and she just retired. And a number of other senior officials at DHS and FDA and USDA in the space. And, I told them this has to be investigated. This has to be investigated. And I sent off letters, emails to numerous officials, notified attorneys, notified a few companies. I also notified a guy by the name of Jason Bashura, who now works at a large food processing company, because he's a member of this national security community. He used to work for the FDA, and now he works for a food processor. And so, anyways, I told everyone, and I gave them my report, my expert opinion. And this is when I was actually on social media or alt media telling this story. And, I just determined that, the Michigan State Police and the Marquette County Sheriff's Department, where I live, and the federal government weren't going to investigate this at some point, right? I mean, if I haven't heard from them, they're not going to investigate. So I decided to wait and time the next push for this, and I decided that this week was the time. And you can post a link to the letter. But so over the past 3 years, I became friends and had to obtain the personal contact information of like Tulsi Gabbard, for example, Pete Hegseth. I appeared on both their shows at one point. And I sent them electronic copies of this first, and then I put these in, registered as certified mail early this week. The rest of the letters will be delivered tomorrow. Sent one to Secretary Noam. Who else did I send one to? Secretary Rollins. Basically, everyone who's involved in this from a national security perspective. And in the letter, it basically just states everything in 2 pages what I just communicated on this podcast. And I also contacted a guy by the name of Dr. Mark Whitrock from DHS this morning, and I sent him a text of the tweet. And Dr. Katie Ballering, I sent her a text. These people are all senior people in national security and public health or food at DHS. So yeah, everyone is probably wondering, what's going to happen next. But because I was trained in forensics, I interned in forensics when I thought about going to law school with the coroner's office. Was trained partially in law enforcement, also in the military, and then later in my career, I was trained as a CDC and FBI criminal forensic investigator for bioterror and chemical weapons. I know how to pull prints, and it's really not that difficult. So I started dusting my house constantly. Like I was having these break-ins and stuff, and I have a ton of handprints. And I turned these handprints into local law enforcement at the Marquette County Sheriff's Department. I have the police report, and I still have the originals that I pulled myself. And to date, they've never been investigated. So if I've got all the fingerprint evidence and palm prints, and they don't look like my wife's prints, and they're not mine, certainly, then whose are they? Because whoever's prints are in my house are likely to be the person that stole the data on my safe.
Hmm.
And since this is a critical, catastrophic national security failure, don't you think somebody should, just maybe take a look at those prints, go ask some people some questions. Maybe I've agreed to turn over all my electronic devices, all my information, any records. I would completely agree to sit down, interview with the FBI or ODNI. I don't care. I have nothing to hide. And I've been screaming this from rooftops, for 2 or 3 years. And my hope is that with the Trump administration and reporting this, is that they're going to investigate.
Doesn't seem like a national security failure. It seems like they did this. I mean, who else has the resources to, well, one, contact you and ping you and start doing all the probing? By the way, do you know? Again, that'd be like if somebody tried to come on my show.
I mean, I go down, you could say globalists, and I don't want to sound like Alex Jones here, but
I
high
don't
wealth
care.
people that have a stake, the Gates, the Fauci types would have those resources, the pharmaceutical industry, the state government. It could have been the Michigan Governor Whitmer and her people. It could have been the banking industry. They certainly have the reach. It could have been political through different NGOs. It could have been Soros, right? Like funding NGOs. It could have been some corrupt Republicans. Because trust me, nobody on either side of the aisle has wanted to touch this with a 10-foot pole.
Of course.
And that's where it gets really strange. And I don't care about the politics of this. I mean, I just want people to step up and do the right thing and solve the problem. Because if this data is out there and our infrastructure is being attacked, well, guess what? Food and ag infrastructure doesn't change overnight, right? These are ports don't change overnight, barges don't change, riverways don't change overnight. These assessments that I did are still valid today. They don't expire. They don't have a shelf life. I can say this generally. One of the facilities in there that was on the list. One of the companies decided to intentionally destroy the facility and take it offline. How much money do you think that company lost?
A ton.
Millions, probably 20, 40, 50 million plus lost revenue on the product line. Plus then the cost of building the new facility probably at a higher cost, 100, 200 million. So this was probably a $500 million catastrophic loss. The insurance companies or someone who was trying to do this for insurance fraud could have done it. Because how the food and ag industry works, and like most big business, there's something called the reinsurance market, and there's companies like Aon on that. And what they do is, so they protect against things like terrorist attacks, hurricanes, catastrophic risk. It's extremely low probability for most of these types of incidents. But when it happens, you lose the entire facility. So even the biggest large producers, they're typically self-insured, right? So they'll pay for the loss in any facility. But um, when they have one of these catastrophic losses, they typically have this stuff called reinsurance. So reinsurance and the insurance behind your primary policy, and that reinsurance, even for the big companies, is typically bought on the market. So you can see there's a lot of reasons for doing this. One other reason is that if your facility is getting old, and you want to make it look like it was it could be someone false flagging terrorists. So if you got a hold of this list, you could just burn down everything on the list and blame it on a terrorist,
Mhm.
and then get insurance to pay it out and get all new facilities. So yeah, I mean, these are all the different hypothetical things to happen. But you know what it starts with? You start with you follow the money, you follow the evidence, and you see where it takes you. And so someone should definitely talk to this Mike Bennett guy, um, because he was the only person that I told that I had this information at that time. Someone should probably talk to my wife and get her, under oath and record it, and do the same to me, and see where this goes. And then analyze the fingerprints. I mean, analyze the fingerprints. Also, like with the government and NSA technology, I know what type of hard drive it was, and I have, I had always had a backup locked it somewhere else. They might be able to find a digital signature of this being sent around through networks in the United States. So there's all sorts of different ways you can actually analyze this and find out where it is. This is not difficult. I mean, I kept these things on text files, and there were spreadsheets, and there's ways for the NSA to use metadata to find it.
No, yeah, no. Whenever anyone doubts the NSA, I like to remind them that in the 50s they were pioneering bouncing encrypted radio signals off the moon onto Navy ships and then out from Mars in the 50s.
I didn't know that. That's
Yeah,
cool.
yeah, James Bamford, Shadow Factory. Yeah, in the 50s. So off moving targets on the fucking moon, and then they even did it with Mars. So yeah, they can do that. But so all those things you just said, it goes back to thinking about the constraints of the 99 out of the 200s. So you have to take, what are the odds of a guy contacting you and he happens to know this? What are the odds he's not an intelligence agent? Obviously, a zillion to one, right? What are the odds that they're able to break into your house and do this? What are the odds that the 99 out of the 200 then happen? And then what are the odds that they can't find out who did it? Well, they can find out who did it. Eventually, you have to conclude, well, they don't want to know who did it because they did it. So, what are the odds of all of those things? It's a zillion to one. And they have all of this.
Yeah.
And again, this isn't some untraceable nation state attack from China. It's like, yeah, dude, they could find where this shit is. They can ping this
Hey,
stuff.
it's simple. If it's government, someone who is associated with the government, everyone's prints are on file. Everyone's DNA is on file. You
Exactly.
can
So
eliminate
if
you can eliminate a lot of people real quick. I
so
mean,
that's
that's
my
the whole.
point, is at a certain point you have to go, why are they not pursuing it? All the things line up, and it's because they did it. Or not to throw the entire intelligence community and DoD under the bus, because it is primarily good people. It was probably a faction or a sub faction or some unofficial involvement between private and public of use this, and if it ever tries to, if they don't let the whistle get blown, don't investigate this. But if it is happening, it's either a foreign nation state, in which case it might not even be disclosed that the intelligence community is researching it, because that itself would be classified. You don't want to give away that you're looking into it. Or it was a powerful faction within the U.S. that did it against us, either to bring us down as a treasonous act or as a false flag to attack another nation state. Either way, this is all happening at very high levels. This isn't local mob shit. This isn't who's
Well,
running the corner.
yeah. So I don't know though. So you have to
All
remember
right.
how these things work. So I'll push back a little bit.
Yeah.
So if you want to do something, and you got to remember, I live in a remote rural area. You just can't have a bunch of outsiders come in here without getting noticed.
Yeah.
Someone pulls down your driveway like your neighbor knows, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So, but typically, if we're the government, they'd rely on confidential informants or other people in the community that would have access, or a local cop, and bribe them and tell them to go do it, or there's a chance they got to my wife. I mean, I'm just being objective here. So yeah, it could have been, it could have been government money or special interest money from either pharma, food and ag, academia, then funneled down to NGOs, because as we've seen through, the CISA reporting. There's a lot of money going through. There was a lot of money going through government organizations to NGOs to do a lot of nefarious things, and some of that then it gets political too, right? Because if that money is getting funneled out, is it going to organizations on the left? Is it going to organizations on the right? So, I wouldn't necessarily just pin the blame on the federal government and say that they did this, because if the government did it, the government would be the most traceable entity to find after the fact. And the fact that I pulled fingerprints, palm prints, shows that these were not people expecting that to happen, right? Like, so if I were back in spook life and I was told to go do something into someone's house, I'd be wearing gloves.
Well, then, I mean, what's the most famous case of something that looked like a bad robbery but was probably intentional? The plumbers, Nixon, Watergate, CIA
Yeah.
agents who did a third-rate burglary. It's because they wanted to be caught. So, just throwing that out there.
Yeah. Maybe.
Do all
I
the
don't know.
fingerprints come out to be Chinese people? They're like, yeah, that's kind of convenient. It's a sloppy job.
Well, the size of the print would suggest a large male.
Yeah.
It's one of the palm prints I pulled.
Or Occam's razor would be they didn't count on you doing that. Most people wouldn't. I wouldn't know how to print if my house was broken into. I wouldn't know what to fucking do.
I'll tell you what to do. So you go get charcoal and a mortar and pestle, and you grind it real super fine, and you just grind it till it's like it's like like the finest dust you can, and you get a makeup brush, and you just dip it, and you just shake it, and you shake it, and you just shake it, and you just create a fine layer of dust. And then if you want to get this makeshift, you take cellophane tape and you lay it on a table, like clear, like packing tape, and then you just stick the pieces together so they overlap if you want to pull big sections. And then you just apply real firm and evenly. You press down and roll the cellophane tape over the
Onto
dusted
the
area. You pull it up, and then you have white paper ready to go. And then you stick
you
it to the
print.
white paper film, and there you go.
Oh,
That's how you pull. It's not
noted,
hard.
noted. Um,
Yep.
Regardless of who did it, federal government, special interests, sub interests, corporations, fucking Ronald McDonald, whatever. The fact that there's sketchiness around it at all implies conspiracy in the truest sense of the word,
Oh,
a
absolutely,
conspiracy. So that
absolutely.
alone, to me, is of note. Whether it was China or DoorDash, someone did this, and a series of events occurred that were each improbable, yet all happened in perfect. Again, 99 out of the 200. It's somebody pings you and goes, "What do you think about this?" You talk about this being in your safe. It gets pulled from your safe. There are fingerprints. You hand in the fingerprints. They're not reported. The 99 out of 200. It's the same thing that the DH that you did your dissertation on for what the DH. All this, it's all. I mean, it. So I don't care who did it. Someone with resources did it. They're not stupid. This wasn't a drive-by shooting, and it's at a. This isn't stupid terrorist. You build a bomb in a backpack and you run into a movie theater. This is like it's you are going for nodes on, and who are you going against? Are you going against Lithuania? No, you're going against the current global hegemon, the United States. I mean,
Yeah,
that's
I
some
mean,
big dick move.
yeah, I mean, it could have been that. I mean, at one point, I even hypothesized it could have been the extreme crazy faction of health freedom, right? Because they'd want the answers to the COVID, right?
Yeah,
So when you come at it objectively, you got to put every possible suspect.
sure.
You have to eliminate suspects, right? You can't just with evidence. So I was coming up with everybody that I possibly could think of, but yeah, this was definitely, I agree, someone with deep resources, and especially for the persistence at which it occurred.
And also that there was really no. And so this is another thing I think about, like when the NSA example bounces stuff off the moon is when you saw how quickly, let's say, Governor Newsom cleaned up wherever it was that Xi Jinping visited, San Francisco, LA, whichever one, how quickly it was cleaned up. They got rid of all the homeless, all the shit on the streets, and very quickly you can see, oh, if they want to do something, they can. If the federal government can very quickly hunt down people with massive resources, like we saw with January 6th. If they want to do it, they can. the reason why something is not happening isn't because they can't most of the time. It's because they're not choosing to. So if there is no main story on this, if there is no briefing about, the FBI talking about, if you have think about January 6th, if you have leads on this person, you can see when they wanted to get to the bottom of something, they can. There was never any big push to get to the bottom of this. Now I get there's damage control, and you don't, if you're in the middle of a war, you don't necessarily want to publicize, hey, we're searching for a missing nuke. I get that. I know that there's stuff. I know that I don't know. I'm trying to be humble here. But the fact that it was never broadly brought up, that there was never any, even in hindsight, hey, it's been over now, but this is what we were doing 2 years ago, even just for good PR for the intelligence community. It was just, there's never really been a story. And everyone knows, though. I mean, every time I remember that all 2023 and then most of 2024, every time one of these videos would pop up on Twitter, every single comment was like, another coincidence. But it never really coagulated into a bigger story, which implies that no one or people of influence didn't want this to be a story.
Yeah, well, the mainstream media didn't really ever touch it, right?
Well, so that's what I mean. Is like
Yeah.
all of this is it seems indicative of a bigger plot, and but then it's also, hasn't it not? I mean, and perhaps I'm ignorant on this, but hasn't that all kind of stopped?
Oh yeah, it has for the most part. Yeah, it's
So
been
that's another weird puzzle piece. Is like, so it stopped. Does that mean the attack was, they stopped doing the attack, or that somebody put an end to the attack?
well, at least in terms of them applying a pressure on me related to the whistleblowing. At some point, once all the truth is out and people like Peter Daszak start getting fired, and I stopped showing up at congressional hearings, the the climate changes, right? The climate changes, and once everyone knows the truth and everyone believes it and everyone's pissed off about it, what good does it do to apply pressure to me except give me more evidence, right? So one of the wise things that Attorney Tom Renz told me early on, he's like, in your situation, these people are going to keep pushing you so hard, and eventually they had diminishing returns from their attack perspective. Because what are they going to get out of this? And the problem is, the longer it goes, the sloppier they get. And I collected a ton of digital and forensic evidence. I mean, I have a terabyte of evidence I collected, and I just want to hand it off. I mean, that's it. I'll give it to them, and I can describe what everything is in me. I'm a scientist. I have it all labeled, organized, from different versions of like hacks. I flashed the different files that were loaded onto the machine being hacked, and where the source of those were. I mean, so not only am I an infectious disease epidemiologist, environmental health guy that specializes in bioweapons, my master's degree was in security technology engineering. And so I'm an engineer and I'm a doctor, and I worked in security tech. So I became much better. Like, I got pretty rusty with my coding because I've been mostly in executive managerial positions. And this last year, man, I'm pretty wicked and interminable now. And with all the new chats out, like the Grok, and you can use these things to write code, and you can just tell it, like, I need a script to do X, Y, and Z, and I need it to do this. Boom, generates the file, and since I know how to code, I can look through it and make sure that it's correct, and then I can tweak things and load it. And yeah, I started copying files, versions of different attacks and sources. Some of it was definitely coming out of the Georgia, Atlanta area. Some of it was coming out of the DC area. I think probably from a large defense contractor. Some of it was coming out of Utah. Some of it came out of the University of Wisconsin and Houghton University. Some of it, I think, came from potentially Michigan State University. So I think, when I say like all these different groups, it was definitely healthcare, pharma, um, you know, political. Some of it was political, I think, too. So I think, like, these universities could have been leaned on by dirty congressmen or senators potentially, saying, hey, you guys go after this guy and not leave a trace. But they got really sloppy because they clearly weren't using VPNs. I tracked one of the hacking incidents to the University of Wisconsin School of Business. And I was sly about it. So I got on my Xbox and I knew my network was hacked and they were in it. And so I got on my Xbox intentionally. And then I went in and I started downloading apps and going to websites through, like, you can use it to go on websites through Edge, I think it's called.
Yeah.
And I started running trace routes. Trace routes routing because when you log into an Xbox, it's hard to install a VPN remotely. and load the files. So they weren't running a VPN. So I was starting to trace route all the traffic off the Xbox. I got the pictures of that.
Oh,
A
whoa.
bunch of super sophisticated stuff. They had backdoored my security system at one point, and I have all the log files and the proof of that. At the same time that my security system got tampered with, they had then also tried to be erased all the same day out of different trail cameras I have along my driveway. So it's just like it's just a ton of evidence. Plus, I have the fingerprints. So I mean, like this is these weren't super bright people because they think that you'd never be able to figure it out. But it all looks like in my opinion, it could definitely be Michigan State Police working with another group. And that could have been they could have been. So I don't think it was the entirety of the Michigan State Police. Actually, what I believe is that I think politicians leaned on. Listen, this is my gut. It's a hypothesis. Okay, is that some dirty Republican politicians leaned on Republicans within the state police to do this because you can't just come around this area without being noticed, right? So they got to use local resources. So who is funding all this stuff? Like I said, I don't think it was just one group. I have pretty solid proof that it was multiple groups. I think I do believe it was some of it was from political groups on the right. Some of it was from um, probably people associated with former President Bush. I had strange people come into my life, so I started talking to basically Bush's inner circle from his administration. They tried to fund a documentary, and it was something called Capture and Kill. Basically, you sign your rights away, and they never do anything with it. And I worked in the courts. I know how to read legal documents. I had to review them as an executive for multiple companies. I knew what they were, and it's a weird thing. The next thing you're talking to people, senior people in the Bush administration. Well, all those people have a lot of money, and they're collected as special interests, and so that's what it looks like. And the funny thing is, I was never from from my opinion on President Bush in terms of bioterror and biosecurity. Um, they did everything right.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm actually a product of that program, and I was very supportive of the different presidential directives that he enacted. I think that they got a lot of stuff right about national security. Obviously, the Patriot Act and some of these other things overstepped civil liberties, but I was very supportive. So it's weird that these people and some of my mentors worked with President Bush or were appointed by him in the Bush administration. When it looks like you have some of these you say old guard Republicans coming after you for this, it's just ridiculous because what am I doing? What was I doing related to COVID that would be so detrimental to their future? That's what I don't get. And then on the left, when you have like the academic types and the leftists doing the hacking, what? So I'm hitting or hurting their revenue streams potentially for gain of function research because the University of Wisconsin has a giant gain of function laboratory. So yeah, it was weird. Just a lot of different attacks out of Louisiana when I traced them back, Alabama, Georgia, like I said, Utah, some Southern California. That'd be like the Scripps Institute where Dr. Kristen Anderson worked. Um, but all this stuff is traceable. It's all traceable. So at this point, I'm just a normal citizen, right? I just want to hand this off to the government so they can investigate it and find out. Maybe I'm complete. So maybe my opinions here are completely wrong. Right? Maybe I'm wrong
Sure.
about everything,
Sure.
but I have the data. I have the evidence. All they have to do is use it through their restricted systems, which I don't have access to. One of the weirdest things is that I had people that I've identified that were following me that were scientists at universities. So isn't that weird? Like their license plates. I hired PIs to go follow these people, and they've been following me around. That was another weird angle on this.
Yeah, it is. There is something deeply funny about how like all the people to f with, right? There's only so many people that it would be this comically bad. It's like John Wick. It's like killing his dog. It's like just your background, like all the shit you do know. It is kind of like you couldn't have messed it up more to go break into your stuff. Just I wouldn't know how to do any of that. Like everything you're talking about is might seem intuitive to you, but I think I'd speak for 99% of people. Like I would have no idea how to do it. I wouldn't know how to capture. I know how to screenshot, but like I don't know how to capture shit. I have no idea. Like it's it is kind of funny, but then you have to wonder. Like, I mean, has has the average person that they've done this against for so long been such an average Joe like me that they've gotten kind of cocky with it? And then they run
Oh
into somebody
yes.
that can document it. And it's like, yes, they're being sloppy, but technically not really, because for the most large amount of people, sloppy has been more than enough. And now they get to you, and it's like a fatal move. And maybe they just don't know what to do now. They've never flow charted it past this. Like, what do we do if the person actually tracks us? I don't know.
Yeah.
Keep doing it. Keep
And
applying pressure. Yeah.
yeah, and some of the hacking traces back to an individual who's in the venture capital world, and I know exactly who he is actually. And he's one of us though politically. So the reason why they were doing it was to in an attempt late. This group was doing it in an attempt later to destroy evidence, and this person also had worked out alongside the intelligence community. So the latest rounds of like the last year and a half of hacking, all about trying to destroy the evidence. But so every time they would try to hack things, they would come on real heavy with the hacks. I'd automatically copy all the different operating system the files, duplicate them, and then automatically wipe everything.
Yeah.
So I created a backup and multiple backups. I started backing up the backup every time. So basically, that's why it's a terabyte large, is because now you can go look and see file changes over history
Yeah.
and then trace the specific hacks with network activity with the router logs back to the sources.
Yeah.
Don't
Yeah.
screw with Andrew Huff.
Yeah. No, hey, man, don't fuck around. No, man, that's how you have to do it. Only the paranoid survive. Um,
I'm not even paranoid. It was just
no, no, no,
standard.
no. It's. I was using that as a phrase. No, no, it's not
Yeah. So
paranoia when
so
it's based in reality.
So what they're doing now, at one point I was wondering if even Apple was in on it because like it was weird. I was watching system processes and how they're functioning, how much memory they're burning, like all these different things. And you just watch it, and it's like people are good at coding and this complex systems and AI stuff that I'm into. It's like watching the Matrix. You watch the screen and you watch it, and I would stare at it for like 30 minutes, and you could just see weird things happening with processes. So then you go investigate the processes and start seeing how they behave, and you watch the behavior on it, and then you can test it to see if it's wrong. And then I'd start digging into the files in the libraries, and start finding like JavaScripts, strange JavaScripts, and different languages being loaded, and Perl, PERL is another type of coding. I'd find Perl stuff loaded in. I would find JSON, which is another
Oh
scripting
yeah.
application. And so I'd find all these things, and they're being stashed in there, and then they'd remote load these and try to remote load the VPNs. And finally, after I had copied and duplicated so many times, I just started deleting them and not even wiping the system because now I've gotten so good about just cutting it out and stopping the worst of it. The funny thing is what they do is they typically hack your phone first, or they get your SIM card. And then if you're using Apple products or anything else in your house and the environment, so within the key system of the operating. So you have keys, right? So these are encryption keys, so devices can communicate together. So like how you get text messages and notifications and all your devices with
Mm-hmm.
the Apple. Well, it uses NFC, Bluetooth, and your Wi-Fi to do that. And then it basically creates a hidden mesh network in your environment. So what the hacker does is they get the phone first because that's the easiest thing to get. And once they got the phone,
Yeah.
then they ping the phone, they text your phone, and then it creates a notification. Then that notification then echoes over all the other devices, and then a VPN. Then they set up VPN connection from your phone to your device or back through your network, your Wi-Fi network. So it makes it look like you were the one screwing around.
Doing it.
So they send you information stuff. So that's how they hide the hack. But they didn't do that all the time. Some of it was really sloppy. Or so you could look at the router logs, and then you could just see who logged into the router. And one guy was so stupid, his name's on it. Like he didn't remove his credentials and just logged into the system remotely. And I posted on Twitter as a Ukrainian scientist.
That's quite the lead to end on. If you don't mind, I do have to
Yeah,
wrap it up because I have another show in a minute. No,
he worked at Michigan Tech, and he was remotely logged into the system. I mean, you can't make this up. And he's
Jesus
Ukrainian,
Christ.
Jewish Ukrainian.
there's the buzzer beater. Yeah. Anyway, Ukraine.
Yeah, Roman.
Yeah. Well, hey, for everybody listening, well, it's not live right now, so I'm so used to them being live. Please go to the description. Please go follow him on Twitter. Please go grab his book, The Truth About Wuhan. I'm gonna try to get this up today. And I'll text it to you. Dude, as always, my platform is yours to use, and I really do really do look up to your grit to fuck these people back, to not just take it,
Yeah.
not just take it laying
So
down. I mean
one,
that.
I haven't asked for your audience,
Yeah.
so and for you guys. So please retweet this. Make sure that everybody sees this video when it's up, and give your congressman's office a call and tell them to investigate the stolen DHS food and ag data. Please investigate the stolen DHS food and ag data. Call your senators, call your congressmen, put pressure on this because these assholes doing this are going to make your food prices go up. Every time a food facility gets destroyed, there's less food on the market, the prices go up. Then they have to build a new facility. And guess where they roll the cost into? You, the consumer. And that's who this is really impacting the most. So make sure that you reach out to your congressmen and senators, and ask them to investigate Dr. Huff's stolen DHS data. Demand it. Demand it. Post it all over social media. Get vocal about it. Tell everyone.
Will do. I'll put that in there as well. I'll text it to you when it's up. And dude, don't be a stranger. Love to have you back on as soon
Okay.
as you want to. If this shit
I'm trying to
develops, I
get
mean,
I'm trying to get back to normal W-2 work, but like every time I get hacked or something, I get pissed off a little bit and I have to do something about it.
hey, get angry with them. But
Yeah.
gotta wrap it up right now, dude. Thank you so much for your time. Always a pleasure to speak with you. All right,
Thanks,
brother.
sir.